The set was a quiet, controlled universe, a soft-focus illusion of a modern apartment. The lighting was low, casting long shadows that made the space feel intimate and private. Today's scene was the climax of the romantic drama, a moment of profound, unspoken truth between the two male leads. For weeks, the director, a seasoned veteran who had become a close friend, had been pushing them to tap into a deeper well of emotion. He knew the script was just a skeleton. The real story was in the space between the lines. Wang Yibo stood by a large window, his posture relaxed, his face a careful mask of cool detachment. Across the room, Xiao Zhan sat on a sofa, a script clutched loosely in his hands. The director, a woman with a sharp eye and a deep, knowing smile, looked at them and gave a signal to the crew. "Okay, everyone, quiet on set. Rolling." The red light on the camera blinked to life. The scene began. Xiao Zhan delivered his lines, a quiet confession of his character's unspoken feelings. His voice was soft, laced with a vulnerability that was both his character's and his own. As he spoke, something shifted. The emotions were too real. He wasn't acting anymore. He was simply talking to Wang Yibo. The lines from the script began to bleed into his own words, a seamless transition that only a person who knew his heart could recognize. "It's not in the big moments," Xiao Zhan's character said, his voice now a mere whisper. "I don't need you to say it. I don't need a public declaration. I knew when you brought me a hot coffee just before that night shoot, without me even asking. The rest of the crew had to buy their own, but you just knew." The director, watching from behind the camera, had a flicker of a smile. She remembered that day. It wasn't in the script. It was a private moment between the two of them. Then, Xiao Zhan went deeper, his voice thick with emotion. "I knew when you chose that specific scarf, the one with the hidden stitching, just so I would feel your warmth from across a continent. The world saw a fashion choice. I saw a promise. This was not in the script." The script supervisor, a hawk-eyed woman with a script in her hand, looked up, a confused frown on her face. Her pen, poised to make a note, stopped mid-air. The most mind-blowing scene began with Wang Yibo's reaction. The script called for him to simply nod, a quiet, almost dismissive gesture. But he didn't. He stood perfectly still, his back to the camera. His shoulders were rigid, but his hands, clenched at his sides, were trembling. The director, seeing this, didn't yell, "Cut." She simply held her breath, a silent, knowing observer to a real moment that was unfolding on her set. Xiao Zhan continued, his voice now a quiet, unwavering stream of pure emotion. "And I knew when you were on that talk show, and the host asked you a question, and for a second, your face was just empty. You had nothing to say. But then your eyes landed on me, and you smiled. And for the first time, your eyes weren't just smiling. They were seeing me. They were seeing me. And in that moment, I knew." A single tear, a diamond of liquid emotion, tracked a silent path down Wang Yibo's cheek. He didn't move. He didn't make a sound. He simply stood there, receiving the most intimate, most profound, most real confession of his life, on camera, in front of an entire crew. He was not acting. The silence was his confession. His immobility was his surrender. His terror was his answer. He was no longer a character in a movie. He was simply a person, being loved so deeply that he couldn't contain his emotions. The director's voice, when it finally broke the silence, was a hushed whisper. "Cut. Print that." The crew, which had been frozen in place, a silent, tearful audience, began to stir. Wang Yibo, his back still to the cameras, finally turned around. He looked at Xiao Zhan, his eyes glistening, and without a word, he crossed the room and pulled him into a silent, unscripted hug. The entire crew burst into a quiet, relieved applause. The director, a tear on her own cheek, looked at the script supervisor. "Toss the script," she said. "We have everything we need." Months later, the movie was released. The scene was the centerpiece of all the promotions. It was hailed as a masterpiece of raw, emotional acting, the kind of moment that only happens once in a lifetime. Fans watched it, and it became the most famous, most discussed scene in the entire film. The final mind-blowing reveal came not from the director or the actors, but from the fans themselves. They began to connect the dots. They posted side-by-side comparisons, a photo of Wang Yibo bringing Xiao Zhan coffee on a cold night, a video of him smiling at Xiao Zhan from across a stage, a still from the movie, now a testament to a private truth. The world had thought it was just a good movie. The truth was far more profound. It wasn't fiction. It was a documentary of their love. It was a secret that had been so powerful it had broken through the barrier of art and revealed itself to the world. In the end, their love story wasn't just a movie. It was the best scene in the movie, and it just happened to be theirs. The movie was not just a blockbuster, it was a cultural phenomenon. The scene, the one where the line between fiction and reality had blurred so beautifully, was watched and re-watched by millions. The public, with their uncanny ability to read between the lines, had pieced together the truth. They had found the real-life moments, the coffee on the cold night, the shared red scarf, the fleeting smiles, and realized the fictional scene was not fiction at all. It was a documentary of their love. The world had found their secret, and instead of tearing it apart, it had embraced it. A few months later, at the premiere of the film, the air was thick with a new, profound sense of reverence. The questions from reporters were no longer intrusive. They were respectful, laced with a genuine curiosity about a love that was so honest it had transcended art. The final mind-blowing scene began when a young fan, holding a microphone, asked a question that was simple, but laced with a deep and intimate understanding. "The scene," she began, her voice trembling slightly with emotion, "the one in the apartment, it's everyone's favorite. Would you ever consider recreating it for us?" The entire room went silent. In the past, this question would have been a moment of intense awkwardness, a polite but firm rejection. They were actors, not a public display. But now, in the face of a love that had become a source of strength, something different happened. Wang Yibo, who had been listening intently, looked at the fan. He didn't smile his usual public smile. He gave her a quiet, almost knowing look, and then, his voice a low, confident rumble, he spoke. "We can't recreate it," he said simply. The fan's face fell, and a ripple of disappointment went through the crowd. Yibo saw it, and a gentle smile touched his lips. Because it wasn't acting. The crowd went completely silent. The cameras, which had been a constant barrage, suddenly felt sacred. Wang Yibo then turned to Xiao Zhan, a silent conversation passing between them that only they could understand. He then, in a slow, deliberate motion, in full view of the cameras, reached out and, with an effortless, graceful movement that was a mirror of the movie scene, gently brushed a stray piece of lint off of Xiao Zhan's suit. It was a silent, beautiful, and deeply personal act. The cameras, which had been trained on his face, quickly pivoted to capture the moment. It wasn't a performance. It was a public display of a private, intimate truth. It was a silent, beautiful confirmation that their love was not a script to be followed, but a reality to be lived. The host of the premiere, a seasoned professional who had seen everything, was speechless. The crowd didn't erupt. They simply watched in a collective, stunned silence. The mind-blowing truth was that they had not just confirmed their love. They had just performed a piece of their real lives in front of the entire world. The line between their art and their reality had completely blurred, and in that moment, they didn't care. The final scene unfolded hours later, in the quiet sanctuary of their car. The world outside was celebrating their bravery, calling them courageous. Xiao Zhan was sitting next to Wang Yibo, who, despite the long night, looked more at peace than he ever had. "The public thinks you're brave for what you just did," Xiao Zhan murmured, his voice soft with emotion. "You just told the world that our love is real." Wang Yibo looked at him, and his rare, genuine smile touched his lips. "I didn't do it to be brave, Zhanji," he said, his voice low and confident. "I did it because I'm not afraid anymore. The movie scene was just a mirror. The real story is us. And the most powerful love stories are the ones that don't need a script." The final, breathtaking truth of their love story wasn't a grand, dramatic confession or a hidden symbol. It was the simple, beautiful fact that their love had become a source of peace, a quiet, unwavering force that had transformed their fear into courage. They had, in the end, not just revealed a secret. They had set themselves free. The press conference was over. The reporter was gone, and the room, once a vortex of emotional chaos, was now a quiet, tranquil space, filled with a profound, pervasive peace. The sympathy transmutation field, born of their combined love, remained a permanent, living entity. For Wang Yibo's resonance harmonizer, it was a low, comforting hum in the background of existence, a silent promise that their love was not just theirs, but a new, powerful anchor for the world. For Xiao Zhan's boundless empathy, it was a constant, soothing flow of peace from the hearts of millions, a profound sense of purpose he had never fully experienced before. But in transcending the human tests of doubt and proving their love to the world, they had inadvertently created a new, unforeseen consequence. Their love, now a unified, powerful entity, had subtly affected the universe's natural order. The cosmos, in its impersonal cosmic way, began to try and find balance. It wasn't a malevolent force, but an unfeeling, inexorable law, and it was beginning to pull back the power it had been lent. To reclaim its balance, it was subtly, gently, and terrifyingly beginning to sever the very core of their connection, their memories of each other. The first mind-blowing scene was not a spectacle of light and sound, but a profound, silent erosion. It began with small things. One morning, Yibo reached for a coffee cup, and for a terrifying second, his hand passed through it. The cup became translucent, shimmering with a faint, ephemeral light, before solidifying again. Then, a part of their living room table disappeared for a moment, a perfect rectangle of non-existence. They looked at each other, their faces pale with a new kind of fear, a cosmic dread. As they watched, a ghostly, shimmering figure of Yibo walked through the kitchen, a quantum ghost of a past version of himself, a temporal echo of a life they had transcended. The universe was gently trying to pull them apart, to restore balance. The world outside was perfectly stable, but their inner world was slowly unraveling. The fear became a frantic, desperate urgency. They realized the universe didn't want to destroy their love, it simply wanted to re-establish the balance that their all-encompassing power had disrupted. The price of their power, it seemed, was a single, unifying anchor. They knew what they had to do. They had to find a different kind of anchor, a more sustainable one that didn't require the sacrifice of their very essence. They decided on a final, mind-blowing act of defiance and reconnection. They had to journey to a place of perfect cosmic neutrality, a silent nexus that exists between realities. This journey was a mental one, a trip back through their own memories, a frantic race against time as their physical forms began to fade. The second mind-blowing scene was a poignant, bittersweet descent into their own minds. They stood on a quiet, sun-drenched hill, their eyes closed, their hands clasped. With every ounce of their remaining will, they projected themselves back through time and space, back through their own shared consciousness. They moved through a series of quantum echoes of their past, a frantic, beautiful race against the fading. They landed in a silent, shimmering echo of their apartment, the day they had first confessed their feelings. They saw themselves, their younger selves, and a faint, shimmering, visible imprint of that memory appeared around them, a ghost of a beautiful past they might lose. They watched themselves, two nervous, uncertain young men, and a desperate sob escaped Zhan's lips. "I don't want to forget this," he whispered. Yibo squeezed his hand. "We won't. I won't let us." They moved on, through a swirling vortex of fading memories, a blur of silent concerts, of shared meals, of quiet, unspoken moments. They fought to hold on to each one, to etch it back into their minds. They landed in another echo, this one on the rooftop in the first snowfall, the memory now a faint, ethereal aura of cold and profound peace. They saw the moment of their secret pact, the starlight thread now a faint, shimmering ribbon barely holding on. It was a terrifying reality. The more they remembered, the more they realized their shared reality was becoming less and less stable. They arrived at the silent nexus. It was a vast, empty void of pure energy. They stood on a platform of nothingness, surrounded by the hum of infinite possibilities. They knew the universe didn't want to destroy their love, it simply wanted its balance. They realized they could offer a different kind of anchor. Not one of combined essence, but of pure, profound, individual truth. The climax was a final, mind-blowing act of love, not of power. With their hands clasped, they used their remaining will to create a single, resonant melody of their love, not as a cosmic force, but as a simple, human song. Yibo's resonance harmonizer, a shadow of its former self, provided the perfect pitch, a single pure note of devotion. Zhan's empathy, a quiet echo of its past, gave the note a profound, heartfelt emotion. They sang a simple melody, a song of love and memory, and sent it out into the universe. This song was the final anchor, a quiet, profound vibration that stabilizes the universe without requiring the sacrifice of their shared reality. The universe, an unfeeling but fair force, accepted their new offering. The melody resonated through space, becoming the new, gentle, invisible force that keeps the world from unraveling. Their physical reality stabilized. The quantum ghosts faded, and their apartment was solid once more. They looked at each other, their eyes full of a new, profound understanding. Their greatest power was not in the heavens, not in a grand spectacle, but in the simple, unbreakable truth of their shared history. They had chosen to fight for their past, and in doing so, they had secured their future. Their love was truly their own now, a quiet, profound bond that exists for its own sake, not for the world's stability. Their greatest act of love was not just to give, but to fight for their own, shared history, proving that a love remembered is more powerful than a love given away.